I want my business to grow. I want to serve more people. I want to receive more money. I want more time freedom, whatever it is you deeply desire. You deserve that. You may not believe that you deserve that. That is the point at which I strongly encourage you invest in doing mindset work, identity work, growth and transformation work, whatever you want to call it. There's an umbrella. There are a million terms, but I think, over-invest in strategy and tactics, and we under-invest in the personal development. So we invest in the business, but not in the business owner.
Yeah.
And so,
and I'm such a believer in that. I mean, it's just, it makes such a difference.
Yes, it makes a huge difference. And I understand, look, it's uncomfortable work, but so is not living out your dreams, constantly struggling.
Hello, my extraordinary women friends. As I record this intro, we are just a little over 1 week from Extraordinary Women Ignite. The countdown is on, and I am tending to all the final details, and even more important, really soul listening to what the women in the room need right now. I feel like it's a special time. I feel like we're all being called to step up, to show up, to really take our voices out in bigger ways. And I think that this year's Ignite is one of the most exciting years that we've ever had, because I feel like timing is just so prime and so ripe for women entrepreneurs to really be getting out and doing their most important work. You know, I always say that women's wisdom is a medicine our earth needs. And I feel like right now it's really, really important. And as I'm listening, as I'm doing this soul listening, I can tell you, I really love this creative process that comes with putting on an Ignite. It's one of my favorite things I do all year long. And I really just start to slow down. I start to pay attention to cards. I start to pay attention to astrology, all the different things around me, to really just tune into what do we need right now. So I'm hoping you are doing some soul listening right now, because I think we're all being called. We've been really getting to this place, this time in our lives, to do the work that we're meant to do. And the timing is now. This year, we're celebrating 10 years of Extraordinary Women Ignite. If you are ready to attract more soul clients, to simplify your path to success, and to build a business with more time prosperity and wealth prosperity, then you want to be in this room. It's all about a new paradigm of business. You will be doing your own soul listening, and you will learn new strategies to grow and scale your business. It's all about soul plus strategy. You'll join other changemaker women who are being called to make a difference in the world. Join us on October 24th through 26th in Golden, Colorado. Details are available at CamiGellner.com/ignite, and use the code EWR to get $200 off your ticket price. Hope to see you there. Today on Extraordinary Women Radio, I'm excited to introduce you to my friend, Kelly Ruta, a wisdom leader when it comes to money mindset. I love Kelly. In this episode, we are going to dive deep into the intersection of mindset and money, how our beliefs, our habits, and our inner programs shape our financial success. Kelly shares her own journey of inner work and how this inner resilience ties directly into creating wealth with intention. If you are ready to turn up the dial on your money mindset, this is a must-listen episode. Let's meet Kelly Ruta. Well, welcome to Extraordinary Women Radio, Kelly. It is so great to have you here.
I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited for us to have this conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you bet. I've just so enjoyed getting to know you over the past few years. And I know your work is really magical. I've gotten to experience some of your work personally. And I know my clients are always looking at the topic of money mindset. And this is just something that, in fact, I have in the last 2 weeks recommended you to some of my clients, saying, go talk to Kelly, go talk to Kelly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, money is just something that shows up for women entrepreneurs all the time. And we're going to dive into that. But before we do, what I'd love to hear is a little bit of your story of what took you from being a clinical psychotherapist to coaching entrepreneurs. I mean, what was that journey for you?
That's a great question. I love when I'm asked that question, because I occasionally have to remind myself how I got here. But in all honesty, I never had any dreams of being anything but a clinical psychotherapist and a keynote speaker. I've been doing that for over 30 years. So I was about 20-ish years into it, maybe about 18 years into it. And I started to notice that I was feeling very differently than I had felt before. So I had a fully booked practice with a
Mhm.
waiting list. I didn't have to
Mhm.
market. That was wonderful. I loved my work. I loved my clients. I just felt very privileged to get to help people in that way. And for a long time, that was enough.
Yeah.
And then I realized it wasn't. And I think it had probably been creeping up on me for a while, but my part of my training is in clinical social work, where they basically teach you to live on ramen noodles and be grateful for it as long as you're out there doing good work in the world. Don't
And
worry
work
about
really
making money.
hard.
Yeah,
Work
yeah.
really, really hard because
Work.
you work hour after hour after hour, just
Yes,
nonstop, right?
yes. So work to your own personal detriment. Doesn't matter
Mhm.
if you can't pay your bills, just make sure you help people. And that really gets crammed down your throat. So I was fine with that for a long time. I was just interested in doing really expert level service work. And
Right.
then something woke up in me, and two things happened. I felt a pull, calling, something. I heard a little voice, not in the funny way, in the,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that basically said to me, there's more for you.
Yeah.
There's more for you to do. There's more for you to receive. And I
Mm.
really listened to that, because in the times in my life and my career journey, when I haven't listened to that inner knowing, I have
Right.
made very big mistakes.
Yeah.
So it caught me off guard, but I listened. And the second thing was, I was noticing that my clients were getting far more out of the work than I was. And after
Mm.
almost 2 decades of that, I really felt the imbalance of that exchange. And that's
Mhm.
just due to the American insurance system that says, you can put that you charge $500 an hour, but we're going to pay you $58 to save somebody, somebody's life, or talk them out of jumping off a bridge, quite literally.
Oh
And I
gosh.
just felt like that was not an equitable exchange anymore. And I just reached
Mhm.
a limit where I just couldn't tolerate that anymore.
Right. Right. So how did you make that shift over to entrepreneurs? What was the calling to entrepreneurs as
Sure.
that
So,
choice?
yeah, that's a great question, because when I had first realized something is not right here and I need to pay attention to what's going on inside of me, I had no idea what that meant. I just knew there were more people for me to reach, and I knew there had to be a way that I could receive more money. And I felt
Yeah.
very uncomfortable about that. So
Yeah.
what I thought was, I'm going to hire a business coach, and I'm going to find out how I can leverage and scale my practice. I thought that was just made the most sense. So I hired a business coach, went to a live event that she held, and I watched her sell $1 million from the stage in 20 minutes.
And you went,
And
what?
Danny, let me tell you something. Part of what she taught, with no training, no background in this whatsoever, was mindset work. And I thought,
Mhm.
your background is in the music industry. What? It really stunned me that
Mhm.
someone who didn't have any training in that area whatsoever was making millions of dollars a year. And
Right.
I thought to myself, with all the training I have, the education, the certifications, all the things, and 20 years of experience doing this, I have to be able to do this and do it with integrity and do it at a very high level.
Yeah.
And so I worked with her to learn how to build a business online. That was a big piece. And it just went from there.
Excellent. Excellent. So did you have some of your own money mindset work that you had to do to transition from the therapist to to the coach?
I have to laugh, because The answer is yes, but I can't even say it loudly enough. How much stuff I had it's
And we
laughable.
all do. We
Oh,
all do. We all have it.
1,000%. But I
Yeah.
think I had almost an arrogant assumption that I was a therapist who had also gone to therapy for a very, very long time. Why is this stuff still here? I was,
Right.
in my early 40s at the time, and I thought, what is happening here? But it came up immediately when I had to start pricing my services. I never had to do that before because
Right.
insurance sort of set
Yep.
the bar.
Set the bar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't really have to think about it, nor did I have to think about, oh, we exchange dollars for hours, and that's not really a model that is terribly supportive for having a life outside of work.
Right.
So
Right.
I started getting triggered left, right, and center, and it made my head spin. And I knew right off the bat, this is a human experience. Nobody gets
Mm.
to escape having money triggers
Yeah.
and having
Yeah.
money beliefs, because we're all exposed on
Totally.
multiple different levels. And we can talk about all of this, but
Right.
nobody gets to escape money messaging. And when you decide to be an entrepreneur, it's going to press every button that you have, and it's going to show you a whole bunch of buttons you didn't know you have. So all of
Right.
mine were
Right.
pressed from day one.
Yeah. 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 So as you work through those, and then of course we always land on what we teach is what we go through, right? That learning. And I've definitely found myself doing that same thing. Where did you land on the, okay, this is where I'm going to really teach. This is where I mean, because you were bringing a lot of your psychotherapy work
Mhm.
into the mix of this. So you were able to start to see it through a whole new lens.
I was. One of the things that I was taught very early on from my original business coach was look for the gap in the industry. If you can
Right.
fill that gap, that's going to be very good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose to be in the online space because I wanted to be able to work primarily with women
Mm-hmm.
and globally from anywhere, not just my, little local area. And when I went online, I was shocked at what was being taught in terms of mindset. There was a lot of information that was false, and there
Mm-hmm.
was also a lot of information that was not backed by any science or solid science
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. And I'm very mindful and careful about how I work with people's minds, because our
Right.
minds are incredibly powerful, but
Right.
they are also very easy to manipulate and
Mm-hmm.
easy to cause psychological damage. And I was watching it happen. And I
Wow.
thought, oh, this can be done better with more integrity, with best practices, with understanding brain science and psychology and several other things. This can be done in a different way that is
Yeah.
actually protects the consumer, but also gets them really, really great results. And you don't need to have any kind of spiritual or religious background. You just need a human brain, because
Mm.
human brains, they work in a particular way. And as long as you know how to work with them, you can get them to work for you.
Awesome. So what are some of the principles came out of that awareness of shaping your own body of work?
Mm. Several things. Number one, as a psychotherapist, I never had to learn how to market. That was just
Mm-hmm.
not a skill I had to learn how to do. I showed up, I did good work, and in a small community, word of mouth gets around very quickly, and it's easy
Right.
to build out a practice. Online is a very different space, right? So I was very naive, I have to tell you, about the difference between marketing and service delivery, because I just assumed that people who marketed well also delivered what they what they promised.
Mm.
And
Right.
I ended up with a lot of clients who were telling me pretty scary and upsetting stories about what their quote unquote mindset coach or life coach or money coach
I've
had
heard
done
some of
with
this
them.
too. I've
Mhm.
heard some really bad stories around
Really,
that.
really bad. And I was
Hmm.
shocked.
Hmm.
So that guided my work. And it really validated for me that drawing practices from science and from research that have been peer reviewed and have been acknowledged as best practices, that would always lead my body of work.
Mm.
The second thing was,
And in part of that, I just want to pause on that, because part of
yes,
what I think where you're going with that is that there can be manipulation that can occur if you're working with mindset work.
yes,
And, it's really pointing fingers back at people.
yes, there can be manipulation, there can be gaslighting, which unfortunately
Yeah.
runs rampant in coaching and consulting. I'm not saying everybody, but it
Yeah,
does
no,
happen
exactly.
quite
I've definitely
often.
heard the stories. Yeah.
Mhm. But and it's not always intentional, the manipulation. Sometimes it's just you were taught improperly how to coach because there's
Hmm.
no regulation around
Yeah.
coaching. So
Hmm.
it's not always intentional.
Hmm.
But the other thing is, until recently, being trauma informed and trauma trained was not a thing. And so I was seeing a lot of people who, I mean, statistically speaking, just about everybody has some sort of trauma in their history. Some of
Right.
it's kind of what we call big T, some of it's little t, but most of us have experienced a traumatic event that we carry with us. And that
Uh-huh.
means statistically, a lot of entrepreneurs have also experienced trauma. And if you are
Hmm.
not trauma informed and you're doing mental, emotional, psychological behavior change work with people, you can re-trauma unknowingly and not intentionally, but you can re-traumatize people very easily and very quickly. And that was the
Hmm.
other thing that was going to guide my work is I've been working with, at that point for 20 years with people who had a massive range of traumas. And
Right.
I know this work like the back of my hand. So infusing this into coaching work was not even something that was negotiable. It was
It was just
required.
who you are. Right.
Yes, it was. And to me, I was like, this is not even up for discussion. This is the proper way to do this so that
Hmm.
you protect people.
Yeah.
And that was really, really big right out of the gate, right out of the gate.
Yeah. Yeah. So the clarity around that, and knowing that you wanted to build your practice with some very strong values, some
Yes.
very strong principles that led and guided your work.
Yes.
So
100%.
when you're working with women with money mindset challenges, where do you take them? What's kind of the journey you take them on?
Mhm. Typically, what I help them understand is, okay, what are the beliefs that are tripping you up in business? So we have conscious beliefs, the beliefs that we're aware of, where we say, I
Hmm.
believe, I don't believe, right?
Hmm.
But the
Hmm.
majority of our beliefs that are problematic are subconscious in nature. And the subconscious mind is so incredibly interesting, but the thing that's important to know is that it drives about ish 90% of what we think and what we decide and what we do every day. If you have a positive belief about something, it's going to drive positive behavior. If you
Right.
have a negative belief subconsciously and a positive belief consciously, so in other words, they're battling each other,
Hmm.
about 9 times out of 10, the subconscious mind is going to win. So, what does that look like?
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
If you believe that you are really good at what you do and you bring, a lot of value to your clients or customers, and so the price you assign to something that you are selling, you are like, this is absolutely valued at this price. And yet you get on a sales call and you're tripping over saying the number, or you instantly want to assume that somebody can't afford it, or you automatically are giving away discounts over and over and over again. or
Right.
you're not looking at your P&L. You're not even looking at your business numbers. You don't know if you're in the green, the red, that you have no idea because you just want to avoid it. You won't even look at your accounts. You
Hmm.
haven't hired a bookkeeper. You only use
Right.
an accountant for taxes. I could go on and on and on. These are things that
The
plague,
little signs.
entrepreneurs, even though we know better. And that's the
Right.
thing I hear all the time from women, because I'm surrounded by absolutely brilliant women like you who will say, why do I keep doing this? I know better. Why do I keep sabotaging myself? It's
Hmm.
because you have a set of beliefs that don't match up with your conscious beliefs. So it
Mm.
undermines you all the time. Things like money is going to make me a greedy person, rich people. These are things that I hear from people all the time. Rich people are gross. Wealthy people are greedy. Who am I to charge that much?
Hmm. Hmm.
Some people are really okay with charging and receiving, but then the money's got to go. They're
Right.
spending, it's out the door the minute it hits their bank account because they
Yeah.
are uncomfortable being financially stable or wealthy for a
Hmm.
myriad of reasons. But
Yeah.
the whole point of owning a for-profit business is to make money. So
Right.
if we
Right.
don't work through these things, I don't care what strategies and tactics you use to build and grow your business, you cannot outgrow those limiting beliefs.
Yeah. Even
You
as you're
can't.
growing your business, you're gonna be running up against those, just really
Absolutely.
you have to get a hold of those roots early on and work with that because
Yes.
I just think I've done a lot of money mindset work and I just know that it, I didn't even know. I mean, there was stuff there that I didn't even know existed,
Yes.
right? And it's like, oh, where did this come from?
Mhm.
And then you start to work with it, and then you find more stuff that you didn't know existed. And then then you work with it for a while, and it seems like it's doing better. And then guess what? Lo and behold, it shows up somewhere down the line. So it's not like it's like it's one and done, and it's
Right.
done for life because it's going to
Right.
be coming back, and it's something that we just work with continuously.
Absolutely. And I like to tell people, I mean, if there's anything your listeners take away from our conversation today, I hope it's that you can exhale a little bit in the knowing that this is an everybody challenge.
Totally.
Nobody gets to escape this. It's not
Yeah.
you. It's not a you problem. It's an all of us problem. Just
Yeah.
because you're a person who decided to become an entrepreneur because you're ambitious or smart or creative, whatever, doesn't mean you get to sidestep the way you're designed as a human. We have to learn how to
Right.
work with it. So if we can stop being so harsh, with ourselves, or why am I
Yeah.
doing this? I feel so stupid and blah, blah, blah. No, this is just because you're a person and we
Yeah.
pick up these things along the way.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm so glad you said that because I've heard people say recently, it's like, why am I still going through this? And it's
Hmm.
because all of that. It's so
Yes.
good, so good.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about this intersection of trauma and business because I
Mm.
know this is something that you like to kind of weave into the mix of this. So how does
Mhm.
that fit into what we've been talking about?
Yeah. This is such a great question. We could do 6 episodes on this alone. So I'll try to be concise. But basically, a trauma happens when you experience something that your brain decides is too much to handle, is a
Mm,
large threat to you psychologically, physically, or both. So we
okay.
don't get to decide what's traumatic. Some of us get PTSD and some of us don't. And it's
Hmm.
just because of how your brain interpreted what you were being exposed to.
Okay.
So sometimes you have trauma because a major event happened, a major loss,
Hmm.
abuse, neglect,
Yeah.
instability in the home, exposure to violence, things like that. Or, the classic case of a veteran who is in a war zone, something like that. But it also happens in everyday life. There are also other traumas that are passed down. And it's so interesting because now research has shown us that trauma gets coded in our DNA. So, for example, I've worked with women of color who were having a real issue with creating wealth. And it wasn't because of something that happened, say, in their core, nuclear family. What they realized, one client told me, she said, I can't stop thinking about I believe it was her grandfather, maybe her great grandfather, who was a slave.
Yeah.
And she said,
Oh,
who
wow.
am I to get out here and make millions of dollars when this man it was literal blood, sweat, tears, and torture every single day.
Yeah.
And it took her a bit to realize, oh, this is what I'm dealing with. It's not actually anything that's happening today or anything that even happened in my childhood. This is
ancestral trauma.
Yes, and generational and familial. So
Yeah.
the messages are still being spoken about in your family. The message isn't the trauma, but the message, when set on repeat with strong emotion, goes right into the subconscious mind. And that's how it gets conditioned. So it is so important that we know and understand if we have trauma, what it is. You don't always need to know where it came from. Some people can't even remember it because their mind has blocked things out. So you don't really need to know where it came from, but you need to know that it's there, and you need to know how it's impacting what you are attempting to do in present day life and business. And so
are we
Go ahead.
carrying that in our bodies as well as
absolutely.
that's what I'm thinking. It's like it's more a bodily type thing versus a mindset piece, right?
It's both. So
It's
it
both.
is
Okay.
both psychological and it is physical, because our mind needs to process what happened, but our body, because of the chemicals that flood us when a trauma is occurring, our bodies are greatly impacted by that as well.
Yeah.
And fortunately now that's coming much more into kind of everyday language, and people are starting to understand, oh, it's not just the psyche that's affected. It's not just the mind and the brain. It's the whole body, because the brain and the nervous system, you can't separate them.
Do you see, for entrepreneurs, like types of trauma more frequently for entrepreneurs?
Yeah. I work primarily with women. I will occasionally take a gentleman as a private client, but I primarily work with women. And the thing that I am seeing show up over and over again, I should say two things, are physical and sexual abuse, which happens to a large number of women. The statistics are absolutely mind-blowing.
It is. Yeah. Totally.
And the impact of gender roles and gender messaging, which some women don't even realize they have. And yet it's showing up and pulling the rug out from underneath them day in and day out. And you may not log that as traumatic, but
it is.
Some gender messaging has absolutely created trauma for women.
I mean, it makes women play smaller, right? It makes them shrink, right? I can just feel the shrinking that can occur with that.
Without question, because basically what you internalize are a bunch of messages about who you should be, even if you're not like that, who you shouldn't be, what you shouldn't do. And then what your psyche takes in is, if I step out of that paradigm, I will not be safe. And at any point in our development, if we believe we are not safe, we get stuck there. There. So if you don't feel safe using your voice, because when you spoke up as a kid, you got hit, try showing up online, try showing up on a podcast, on a stage, anything. It's very, very difficult. So also, if you were raised that women's role is to stay home only, you have no other options, you don't go make your own money, you keep house, and that is not what you prefer, well, going out and making money, there's going to be some resistance, because even if consciously you think that's nonsense and you want to go make a bunch of money for you, your family, whatever. But subconsciously, you were taught that over and over and over as a a child or a young woman. This is going to be something you have to work through.
Yeah. So what are some things that our listeners can do that's really practical to work with some of their money mindset stories, some of the trauma they might have? What's something that you might bring just that's real practical for them to work with right now?
Absolutely. Number one, if you suspect in any way that you have trauma that you are carrying around with you, and you don't even have to know exactly what it is, right? But if you're like, I really think that experience or that relationship or whatever, that really left some scarring, is sometimes how people will describe it, that is still affecting me every day, even though it happened decades ago.
Right.
I am going to beg you to please go to therapy. There are a million kinds. I recommend what's called EMDR. It is not traditional talk therapy. It is basically, reprogramming your brain around an event. But whatever type of therapy you choose to go to is up to you. Just please go, because I do not believe in trauma coaching. Therapy and mental health experts, they exist for a reason.
Right.
If a trauma, it comes up in coaching, a coach should know how to handle that. That's why being trauma informed is so important. But please, there is no shame and only things to gain from doing that healing work, as hard as it is. And that's coming from somebody who not only did it with other people, but I've been in and out of therapy since I was 14.
Me too.
I'm about to be 53. Long time.
Yeah.
So that's thing number one that is very practical.
And I'll tell you, as a coach, it's wonderful when your client's doing therapy work at the same time you're coaching them, because they're getting the benefit of both sides.
Yes.
So it's really powerful.
Almost all of my clients are either currently in therapy or have done a significant amount of it already.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Another practical piece of that, because a lot of people say, I don't even know where to start. I've never done this before. I strongly recommend you go to psychologytoday.com and you use their therapist finder database. It is excellent and customizable for your insurance or where you live or what kind of therapy, or you want a male versus a female. There are all kinds of filters. So that's a great place to start. So that's one practical step. The second step that I think is incredibly important is, if you think to yourself, you know what, I want my business to grow. I want to serve more people. I want to receive more money. I want more time freedom, whatever it is you deeply desire. You deserve that. You may not believe that you deserve that. That is the point at which I strongly encourage you invest in doing mindset work, identity work, growth and transformation work, whatever you want to call it. There's an umbrella. There are a million terms. But I think, overinvest in strategy and tactics, and we underinvest in the personal development. So we invest in the business, but not in the business owner.
Yeah.
And so,
and I'm such a believer in that. I mean, it's just, it makes such a difference.
Yes, it makes a huge difference. And I understand, look, it's uncomfortable work, but so is not living out your dreams, constantly struggling. It's, you have to pick your poison, basically. So I'm going to encourage you to invest in that work. And then
the one thing with my mastermind program, that's one of the things that I am a big believer in, and that's my mastermind, is the soul plus strategy mastermind, because it is the inner work, and the inner work is where the magic happens. The inner work is where the breakthroughs happen. There's just so much good that can happen, and we can always apply the strategy alongside of it. But that inner work will lead us. It will guide us in such a beautiful way if we start there.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that that's the reason why the majority of my referrals come from business strategists, because they're excellent at what they do and they teach high level, fantastic work. And the clients are getting, quote unquote, stuck because they're in resistance. Well, as a trained therapist, that's a zone of genius for me, is working with somebody who's in resistance to something. So once you can move through that, you can go get into action, pivot, change, be creative, any of the things you need to do, right?
Yeah.
To your point. The last thing is this, and this may seem very silly, but I really encourage people to sit with this for a moment. We are our own worst critics. We are so hard on ourselves, and we have such ridiculous expectations of ourselves. I don't mean in terms of, I'm going to go make this level of money or this number of sales or help this, number of people. I mean in our expectation that we're just going to get over stuff. We're just going to pick ourselves up and brush ourselves off and keep going like we have no boundaries or limitations. That we should already be over this by now. All of these kinds of stories we tell ourselves. Yeah. If that's you as a listener, please begin to just observe that these are stories you're telling yourself on repeat over and over and over. Please understand that those stories are costing you dollars and time and peace and joy every single day. And please extend yourself a little bit of grace. Grace is one of the most beautiful things you can give yourself. It doesn't have to be like peace, love, and joy all the time. We know that that's not reality. But in hard times, if we can't extend ourselves just a modicum of grace, that being a person is hard, and being a person who's decided to be an entrepreneur, also not the easiest path. This is what we chose for ourselves. This is not a cakewalk, right? And so let's start treating ourselves the way we would treat somebody else in our situation.
I love that one so much.
Those are the three biggies, in my opinion.
Yeah, that one's a really big one. I just, with one of my upper level mastermind group, we just spent a whole session on what are those stories that are showing up for you day after day. And do you realize what you're telling yourself, right? It's like if you really start looking at the stories that you keep telling yourself over and over again, and the weight that brings onto your body and what that does to your body is just tremendous. So I love that one especially. Tremendous. Cool. Yeah. So I know you've had long COVID challenges over the last several years, and you really have found ways to set solid boundaries for yourself. So will you just talk a little bit to that? Because I think that, we all have stuff coming up in our lives all the time. There's going to be something that's coming up here or there, whatever that might look like. Yes. And we have to choose ourselves first. And I really admire that in you.
Oh,
so just share a little bit about that journey for you.
Yeah, this has been a hard one habit. So I grew up in a very abusive environment, and the way that I survived it was I didn't know what the word boundary meant, but by really saying no and meaning no. That is how I made it through. My sisters became people pleasers. That's how they made it through. We all, find a way to make it through. Right. And sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes later on it's not. So boundaries for me have always really been pretty non-negotiable in my relationships. And it wasn't until later on in my life, probably like my mid-30s maybe, that I realized that wasn't true for everybody. I did not realize that.
Right. Okay.
And I didn't even understand fully what it was. So now this is something I teach and coach on all the time because it serves me very well. And I think for women in particular, this idea that if we put ourselves first ever and set boundaries where we say no to other people and they might be upset about it, that makes us selfish. Instead of, yes, that means I make myself a priority. If I'm not a priority, how do I do anything for anybody else? Right. And then the other thing is, and this has been something that has been intentional and unconscious for many years for me, is building my resilience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a gritty person by nature. I'm tenacious by nature. I'm a spitfire by nature, but you can't always use fire to get through things.
Right.
So resilience for me has been learning really what are all of the different ways that I can make sure when I get knocked down, because I have accepted that getting knocked down is inevitable. It happens
Mm-hmm.
to everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't sometimes sidestep it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, getting back up is also not negotiable. I
Right.
will get knocked down, but I have to get back up. And my way was always to fight my way through
The
everything.
fiery way. Mm-hmm.
Because it's just my nature. But when
Right.
this is one thing that long COVID has taught me. It has caused really severe fatigue for me.
Mm-hmm.
Many days I cannot get out of bed at all. You cannot fight your way through that. It makes you
Right.
sicker. You
Right.
have to surrender, knowing that if you do, there's better days coming. Well, for
Right.
somebody like me, the word surrender is not a fun word. It doesn't fit my personality, doesn't anything. So sometimes for women, it's they have to learn the fight because they were taught be soft, be nice, be, a lot of women get that. No, I had to learn
Learn to be
the
soft.
softening,
Yeah.
because if not, then I wasn't being kind to myself. It's also been about relationship building. The therapist always has trouble asking for help. This is just the way of it. So
Mm-hmm.
really training myself to, without apology and justification, say to other people I trust, I need your help right now.
Yeah.
And to not put all sorts of judgments around that it's just a truth. And I get to ask. I don't have to just be the one that gives everybody the help. I can ask and receive as well.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
resilience building has been a journey, let's put it that
Yeah.
way. But it is one of the best investments of intentional energy I've put into myself.
I love it. And I love the way that you say, really look at yourself and see what your natural tendency is. Are
Yeah.
you fiery or it's like really pay attention to that and know that we have to have both sides of that to
Yes.
be
And
healthy.
it's not you having to be someone you're not. It's
Right.
just you fully developing all the skills for resilience. And sometimes that's learning to be fiery when the situation calls for it. And sometimes it's learning to be softer when the situation calls for it. And the discernment to know which situation is which.
Cool. Very cool. So what's next for you? What do you got coming up and exciting? Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Oh, thank you. I so appreciate that. So really the place that I'm focused right now, just for some context, I thought to myself, how can I get the mindset work that I do into as many hands as possible? So it's not just one-on-one work. How can I get this to somebody who's making their first 50,000 or they're making 5 million and everybody in between? So I created a 90-day program. It's called The Subconscious Millionaire. And in it, I teach a very simple, but not always easy, 5-step process that rewires your brain and also reprograms your subconscious beliefs. It reveals what they are to you. It connects them to your business activities, what you're doing, what you're not doing and avoiding, and how much money that's costing you or time, whatever. And it's the thing that I love so much about it is that you can take this and learn this from me, and you might not ever need me again. You don't need to then buy 17 other levels of what I do. If you want to come do private work, great, come do it. I'm here for it. But you can learn this process and use it for the rest of your life and the life of your business. Because to your earlier point, this stuff comes back up. And also when we stretch outside of a comfort zone, new stuff comes up and we're like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was there. I thought like maybe I had emptied the vessel, but apparently not. So having a tool where you can go, okay, I know exactly what to do to move through this as quickly and easily as possible. That is worth a lot of money over the life of your business. But more
Totally.
importantly, it is peace of mind, a calmer nervous system, just a more centered, grounded way to move through the challenges of business. So
Mhm.
you can find me on Instagram. My website's currently under construction. So that is the best place to get in touch with me. It's always me in the DMs. It's never a team member. And I do webinars throughout the year to teach about it. But again, I love just having conversations in the DMs. So send me a message and we can talk about whether or not this work is a good match for you to get you where you want to go with more ease and more speed.
Love it. Love it so much. Okay, the final question I always close with is what are 3 pearls of wisdom you want to leave us with today? I know you've given us a lot, but just 3 pearls that you just want to close us out with.
Absolutely. I love this question so much. So much. Okay. Number 1, the most expensive problem that you likely have is that you don't trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to trust yourself, and then everything else will begin to come together. That's number 1. Number
Beautiful.
2, you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are things that you experience. They are often telling you a story that is untrue or partially untrue. So learn to become a critical observer of your thoughts rather than getting into, the ring and going 9 rounds with them. That is not a good use of your energy.
Yeah.
And number 3 is for business in particular, building really authentic, meaningful, two-way relationships with other people will be one of the best investments, long-term investments you ever make in your business. But besides the money and opportunities that it can bring you, you will meet and get to know the most incredible human beings, and the things that come from just knowing amazing people and what that does to your, heart, soul, body is such an incredible gift that you can have via your business. So those are my 3 pearls.
I love them. And I especially love that last one. I just feel in the people, the connections, what it does for us. We can live into that in our bodies.
Absolutely. It's soul food. It really is.
Yeah, totally. Well, Kelly, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing all your good wisdom with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me and for really just asking incredible questions that I think have led to a really juicy conversation. So I appreciate
I know a lot of
that,
people are
and
going to
you.
love this. Thank you so much.